I think it's good to have reenactments for people to get a sense of what it is, because I think sometimes if it's done right and done accurately, as it should do, it must have the historical context that's accurate in order for it to be portrayed. If it's done correctly, I think it's actually a good thing to do so people see, because sometimes I think we know slavery happened, but I think a lot of times people, if they don't see the performance of it in that recreation, or if they don't see the material manifestations of the many things that we have here, even at the museum, that was associated with it, I don't think we kind of grasp the enormity of it, or the violence associated with it, or the conditions of slavery itself in general. So I think it's always a good way of presenting it or recreating it or telling the story of it, right? Rather than as this abstract thing. I'm open to all forms of its manifestations that people can talk about it. I think slavery is not well taught in schools, if and when it is taught. It should be a big part of our curriculum, and I don't think that it is yet. We don't learn about all the major events of slavery that affected Grenada in particular, not just here on the island, but all the events across the Atlantic world that impacted what happened here in Grenada. So for example, you have Saunders rebellion. That was a direct impact of the Haitian Revolution. We need to see how all of these things are connected, and I don't think those are taught. Speaking of Saunders rebellion, we don't really learn too much about Saunders. Most people I talk to here of a certain age, most people don't really know who that is or what that event is. They may have heard of Saunders camp, but they don't have a clue what that means. And I think that's a travesty for us as part of our culture. And another thing I will say too about all of these things that we're trying to do here is a lot of people here in Grenada will say, this is not for me, really. This is for the tourist. And that's actually a misnomer, and it's quite false, because it's our Grenadian heritage. We are the ones who have to define and determine those, and we are the ones who should tell the story to the outsiders coming to visit. Certainly they will partake in that, but we are the ones who need to tell that. It's shameful sometimes when you have outsiders coming in and telling us more about a history than we are even aware. Or even somebody who came here in preparation of coming here, they may have read the history of Grenada and they know of certain things, but we don't, those of us who are living here, because we don't think it's important. And I think that's a major component of what we really need to do here in terms of how do we resolve all of this. Getting some policies in place that will address some of these things to protect all of these things, whether it's the tangible things in our landscape and so on, as well as those performances. I think we need to have more exposure to that, because I think the younger generations, there's sort of this idea that they may not necessarily want that, but I think part of that is that they may not have been exposed to it, so they're not aware of it and of its importance. So I think we definitely need to enforce the policies that are already on the books, which most people don't know, and also to add additional ones that help protect and conserve these for future generations. So there's that component, of course, educating the public on these particular things and their role as well, right? We're not just passive people. We are supposed to partake in that as well. And also simultaneously, I think, also training people. We need people who are professionally trained, like in all of these disciplines, whether it's in archival restoration, archival maintenance, whether it's in museum studies and heritage studies, whether it's architectural heritage, and so on and so forth. There are so many, we need people professionally trained to manage that on a local level. We shouldn't have to have outsiders come in to do that, but we should support local people who will get trained to be the people who are in charge of all of these things and take charge of that, because that's really a key component of that.